Hello. Welcome on back to my channel. I hope y'all are doing well. Today I want to give a big thank you to Sephora for sponsoring today's video, where I'll share with you some of my top recommendations to check out during their savings event. So without further ado, if you want to learn how I created this look right here, then keep on watching. So to begin, I'm using the LANEIGE Cream Skin Toner to begin prepping face skin with. This is a nice first start because it's a milky cream toner hybrid that's packed with peptides and ceramides, laying down an overall hint of hydration without leaving an oily-like film behind. To complement this, I'm using the Elemis Pro-Collagen Marine Cream to further hydrate her skin with. This has been a staple in my skin prep routine for some time now. It's quite nourishing. It makes the skin so plump and hydrated, especially for those with dry skin, and makeup just lays beautifully on top of it. It is worth noting that the formula I'm using here has SPF 30. They do have one without the SPF if that's your preference, but I wanted to show how well it blends into the skin without leaving a white cast. Next up, I'm using the NATASHA DENONA Hy-Glam Color Corrector in the shade C6. Apply some to the back of my hand and using an eyeshadow brush to lightly dab this onto different areas of the face that I want to color correct, such as around the eyes and mouth. Applying this to areas that are a little darker or have hyperpigmentation will really help neutralizing, especially when it comes to when we use our foundation and concealer later on. Now once this is lightly blended, I like to take the one size setting powder in the shade Rich Peach and use the smallest amount of this to lightly set that corrector into place. We're not baking or anything, but just using a hint of powder on top of this corrector will help keep it into place and prevent it from mixing in with our other complexion products. But real quick, I'm going to take the Milk Hydro Grip primer and apply this product onto the T-zone area. I love this stuff and I always have it in my makeup kit because as the name suggests, it really helps the products that we're using grip onto the skin, especially if you're the type of person who notices that your foundation and powders lift throughout the day. A little bit of this dabbed onto the skin helps keep it adhered on. Now for foundation today, I'm using the HAUS Labs Triclone Skin Tech Foundation and working this into the bristles of a dense foundation brush. I'm pressing this into the skin, building up the pigment where I want it. I feel like every time around this time of year during the Sephora event, I'm recommending this foundation because it really is one of my favorites. And I'm going to get into all the details of the Sephora event in just a moment, but I really want to give this foundation the love it deserves. It's buildable in coverage. It has a soft skin-like finish. The packaging is a 10 out of 10, and the shade range is superb. I'm using the shade 480 on Faye, and it's a perfect match. It has those medium, deep, neutral tones that blends perfectly into the perimeter of her face and neck, and will pair well with the concealers we use later on. Once I have this blended, I'm mixing together these two shades from the Makeup Forever HD Skin Cream Face Palette to contour and define the face with. Applying this to the perimeter of the forehead, the cheekbones, and along the jawline. This palette is like a one-stop shop and is really convenient to use for not just makeup artists, but also the everyday makeup consumer. We have base foundation shades in here, some bronzer and contour shades, and even some blushes, which we'll use afterwards, but I like applying this contour on with a blush brush and then go over everything with a sponge to make sure it's well blended and diffused in. For concealer, I'm using the NATASHA DENONA Hy-Glam Concealer in the shade P9 and using this to conceal around the eyes before you see me blend this in with a sponge. If there's any concealer worth picking up during the savings event, in my opinion, it's going to be this one here. It's full coverage, it blends beautifully, and there's tons of different shades to choose from. In fact, I'll end up using 2 different shades today, but before we get there, let's first break down the details details of the Sephora Savings event for those of you who don't know yet about the tiers and all that. So the event is currently happening. It began on November 1st and it ends on November 11th. ROUGE members have access right now with 20% off. VIB members have access starting on the 5th with 15% off. Insiders will also have access beginning on the 5th with 10% off. And of course, the last day to shop the event for all tiers is November 11th. We can shop as many times as we like within those dates. We can even shop online with our multi-use code savings. And I do want to say the Sephora collection products are 30% off. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend you sign up to become a beauty insider. I'll put the link down below if you need it. And of course, as always, I'll put the links down below for all the products I used today, since everything I'm using to create this look can be found in Sephora or on Sephora.com. So yeah, there we have it. Okay, for a moment, I'm going to head back to our Makeup Forever palette, pick up this blush shade and pop this right on the high points of her cheeks. Of course, you can use whichever cream or liquid blush you'd like for this step, but given we used the same palette for contouring, I really want to show you how diverse the product is and how we can incorporate the other shades. But it's at this point I can take a lighter shade of the NATASHA DENONA concealer. This is the shade P7, and I apply it just to the lower inner corner there of the eye to really brighten this area up. So the first shade we used was closer to her skin tone, and we used it as a base concealer color, but this shade is to really brighten the under eye. And then I like to mix the two shades, creating a custom color to highlight around the face, such as the chin, center of the forehead, and down the bridge of the nose. I even like to take a little bit right below the cheek contour to add a subtle highlight, but I think what's most important here is how strategic I am being with the use of color by keeping the brightest part of her face in the center and then gradually shifting tone as we work outwards. It creates the spotlight effect to the face that looks incredibly soft and flattering. Now to start blending, I'm using this mini beauty blender to start diffusing out the brightening concealer, keeping that placement pretty tight to the area we had applied, and then taking the one size setting powder in the shade Sweet Honey along with the Huda Beauty Easy Bake powder in the shade Cinnamon Bun, mixing them together and using this mixture to set the under eye into place. We're not baking quite yet, but just pressing a small amount of this powder in to lock that concealer into place. And I use about an even 50-50 mixture of the powder. The one size powder is the brighter shade that we'll end up baking with. The Huda powder is the deeper tone we'll set the rest of the face with, but mixing them together creates a shade that's somewhere in the middle that I like to use for the under eyes to keep this area bright and lifted. To start with baking, I'm using the one size Sweet Honey powder and applying a generous amount to the under eye there with my powder puff. And then you'll see me take a clean brush to kind of, feather out the edges, but it's this blend set bake technique that's going to give us a flawless under eye when we come back later on to wipe off this powder. So we blend out the concealer, set it into place with a little powder, and then finish off with the baking method. And I know it seems a little like excessive to be using different powders, but it's really so important, especially when working on deeper, richer skin tones, that we get the color of the powders right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I admit, my eyeliner work might be a little wonky sometimes, and other times I don't get the lip liner quite right, but skin, I don't play around with. The shades, the finish, the undertones, all gotta be perfection, and that's the direction we're headed here. As the powder is baking, I've begun blending out the remainder of the highlights we placed around the face. To set these products into place, I'm heading back to our Huda Beauty Easy Bake powder and using only this shade to set the complexion products. I really like this powder for her because it's not going to alter the tones of the foundation or contour. The warm undertones of this shade melt right into the skin, giving it a smooth, soft matte finish. So just to recap, Huda Beauty powder alone around the face, Huda Beauty and one size powder mixed to the center of the face, and then one size powder alone to bake with. Now taking this Fenty Sunstalker bronzer in the shade Mocha Mami, I'm dusting this onto the areas we had applied the contour earlier for added definition and warmth. It doesn't have to be an excessive amount of bronzer. The creams kind of did most of the work for us there, but just enough to give it a little extra something. To complement the cream blush we used earlier, I'm picking up this Patrick Ta Blush Duo in the shade She's Vibrant and popping it right onto the high points of her cheeks. I mean, I think all Patrick Ta blushes are worth checking out during the savings event, but there's something really special about this shade here. It's a beautiful pinky coral that brightens up the cheek and complements the peach undertones of the setting powders we used so well. Now to start on brows, I'm taking the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Pomade in the shade Ebony and using this pigment to build up the brow shape. I will mention Faye makes it pretty easy for me because she already has these beautifully shaped brows, but I want to define them a little more to give us that 90s supermodel inspired look and without having to pluck any brow hairs. So I do that by filling in the brow, keeping most of the color on the outer half, and then using our concealer to clean up and highlight the brow bone, and finish by setting the concealer into place with our baking powder. For the eye makeup today, what I'm actually going to do is use our Fenty bronzer as eyeshadow, really laying down that pigment onto the upper lid and diffusing outwards into the temple and then up towards the bridge of the nose for that soft smokiness that kind of ties in the rest of the complexion. I'll also apply a little to the lower lash line, but still keeping it quite soft and simple. To glam this up, I'm taking this Patrick Ta Eye Illusion eyeshadow duo in the shade Do You Know Who I Am, picking it up with my finger, swiping it onto the upper lid, and you see how quickly this transforms the look. I don't even think this lighting is doing it justice because it looks even more sparkly in person, and it's so easy to use. I just swiped it right on, and then I like to use a clean blending brush to diffuse the sparkle up and out, and that's all there is to it, really. Now I am going to go for it today and use this Anastasia Beverly Hills Black Liquid Liner to trace along the upper lash line, winging it out towards the end to create that feline effect. If you enjoy using a classic liquid liner formula, this one from ABH is worth checking out. It's waterproof, it's pigmented, and the felt tip applicator makes it extremely precise. And coming from me, that that says a lot because, well, you know, I'm not the greatest at eyeliner, but this one really does make it pretty easy. As for lashes, I'm using the IT Cosmetics Superhero Mascara and applying this onto the top and bottom lashes. I did apply the Sephora Collection false lashes off camera in the style Charming, and then I used a couple individuals at the end for some extra length, but it's this mascara that's going to help blend her natural lashes with the falsies and give them some extra drama. And then we can finally wipe away that powder, and what we'll have left behind is a beautiful, bright, smooth under eye. To begin on the lips, I'm using the One Size lip liner in the shade Coin Collector and using this to trace her lips with. This is a staple in my makeup kit because it's the perfect depth of brown to get a defined contoured lip, and then of course you can switch out the lipstick you pair with it depending on the look you're going for. But today we're going for a nude lip, so I'm next taking the Sephora Collection Cream Lip Stain in the shade 141 to diffuse that liner inwards. I'm the biggest fan of these liquid lipsticks because they're full coverage, they're transfer proof, they're extremely long wearing, and very affordable. We've also got some playtime to work this product around before they dry down, so what I'll do is I'll use a deeper tone around the perimeter and then take a lighter shade like this one that I have here. It's the shade 69. I tap it into the center and then diffuse it outwards, which gives us a soft ombre effect. Another thing I really like about these lipsticks is that there's a ton of different colors to choose from. Don't quote me on it, but I think there's around around 50, so there's definitely a color for everyone for any occasion. And then of course you can keep it matte or you can gloss it up, which is what I end up doing using this Fenty Gloss Bomb in the shade Fussy 02. I always stock up on my Fenty glosses around this time of year because I love them so much. Same goes for Buxom, love their glosses. Pat McGrath, Anastasia, Lawless, you really can't go wrong with any of their formulas. But once we have this high shine finish, we can finally finish off by using one of my all-time favorites, the One Size Until Dawn setting spray, to set and lock this makeup look into place, making this the final step in how we created this timeless look on our naturally beautiful model.
I know I'm yours, baby, so come give me love. You know you're my baby, so come give me love. I never felt nothing quite like this. I get a high every time we kiss. Can't get enough, baby, so come give me love.
And there we have it, kids. I hope you all enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, be sure to give this video a big ol' thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out more of my work on my Instagram at Painted by Spencer. And until next time, I'll see you soon.